In 2003, when I returned from working overseas to Melbourne, I needed to find a new job, and I got a job in the telecommunications industry. Well, I'd spent 17 years working in the oil and gas industry, so that was quite a switch. And what I was given to help me sell was 100 slide PowerPoint packs. And I didn't know the technology, I didn't know the client, and I didn't know my company. Apart from that, I was well suited for the job. 100 slide PowerPoint packs are not what a new salesperson needs to sell. They need stories. Ideally, those stories would be in a story bank, but of course they weren't, and almost no company has a story bank, except hopefully your company is going to get one. I'd like to show you what a story bank is, so that you understand, and so you understand exactly what I would have loved to have had, but had to go and find for myself. So let's have a look at our story bank. So this is the story powered sales story bank for Anecdote and Anecdote's partners. So all our Anecdote partners have access to this, and it contains the stories they need to sell story powered sales to their customers. It's organized probably a little bit differently from how you would organize it for your company, but let me demonstrate. So scrolling down here along the side are the categories of story types from the story powered sales course. And over here you see what those are. We have 9 story types. We go in deep on 4 of them during the course, and some of them you cover later in later parts of the course. So starting with stories to connect and build trust, personal stories. So here you see an example of a personal story from me and from one of our partners. Key staff stories. So here, for example, is the story of Sean Callahan, who is the founder of Anecdote. Anecdote was founded back in 2004. And here you see the structure of each story in the story bank. Turn that off. So we've got a video. The video doesn't have to be high quality like this one. It could be just a video off your smartphone. And then we have information about how to use the story, when to use this story. So for an Anecdote partner, use this key staff story if you need to introduce Sean Callahan to one of your clients. Maybe Sean's going to come and meet your client, maybe going to meet on a video call or something. You could tell this story. And then here are the resources, link to Sean's LinkedIn profile, a little bit about him, and a picture. Then we have company stories, which is the next type of connection story in the connecting and building trust. And here I've put in a couple of examples from some of our recent clients. So here, for example, is a very draft 1-minute company story from Generali, the Italian insurance giant. We worked with their Hong Kong sales and marketing team recently, and this is me helping them to create their company story. More information, when to use the story, links and facts, and then here's a link to a timeline that I got a lot of the information from when I was creating that story. Then we have clarity stories, stories to sell change. So here's the Anecdote response story to COVID-19. Success stories. Now, success stories will be the major part of any sales team's story bank. You might end up with hundreds of them. Now, I put in just a few here from our Anecdote business. For example, this is a recent one that we did with an Australian environmental engineering company. The video, this one takes a bit over 2 minutes to tell. When to tell the story? Well, tell this story if you've got a prospective client that's in manufacturing or engineering or environmental engineering, professional services. Here I have the types of students that came along to the course: general managers, marketing managers, product managers, and then some links to the company. And then here I have a little screenshot, group shot of the course, which was done virtually, as you can see, of the team. The types of facts and resources that you might need in your story bank depend entirely on what the salesperson would need to feel comfortable telling that story. Imagine that you tell a story. What's the client likely to ask next? What facts do you need to go along with the story? And they need to be listed out. In general, stories are pretty easy to remember, but we forget things like the facts, like what date was that and where was that exactly. Those little facts are really important, and it's great if you can have them listed out as text information with the story. So that's success stories. Now we have insight stories. So here's a story about anecdote circles, which is one of our anecdote story listening techniques. This is the story of how we discovered that. Influence stories. Likely to be another area where sales teams would like to have many stories to help them out, because these are the stories that you use to combat anti-stories, handle objections, if you like that terminology. These are the stories that are examples of when that objection, that wrong belief, that anti-story was not true. Here's a couple for our business. There's no ROI in storytelling. Well, Mark Schenk, our managing director, would have you know otherwise. Storytelling doesn't work for technical people. Here's a story to counter that. Two brilliant stories actually there. Value stories, the stories that show your leaders or people in your company demonstrating leadership by doing things that show the value of your company, by creating a story around your values. Very powerful stories. And finally, stories for negotiation, for closing the deal. So that's it. That's our story bank. Your story bank might have categories for your competitors. You might collect stories about your competitors. We don't really feel like we have that many competitors, but there you go. It might have stories for your product groups or for different geographies of your organization. It's completely up to you. Now, a quick word about the content management system. We're using Thinkific, which is a learning management system. There are many others like it, such as Teachable and Kajabi. They're good in some sense. They're good for capturing all types of content, video, audio, textual information, PDF. They're good at signing people into the system and knowing who looked at what content. They're not that great for search and tagging and finding particular information. What I've actually done, you may have noticed, is I've put tags in the titles because you do have a search. You can search for lessons, but it's not as great as a fully blown knowledge management system. I've spent a lot of time looking for what I would consider the ideal story bank software, and I don't really think it exists. And you may well be constrained by your internal IT system anyway. Many companies use products like Microsoft SharePoint or Slack or whatever. So you may have to use those. So there you go, quick run through our Anecdote SPS story bank so that it's a little bit more concrete for you. And your Anecdote partner would probably demonstrate this to you when they're talking about the story bank.